The problem is that they have no escape now. Now they can't dive into kind of their separate roles in the business. They don't have something to distract their minds or to keep them busy or give them that sense of purpose. So pretty soon they end up losing interest in their hobbies. That leisure day, all of a sudden, it turns more into a stressor or even a bore because of a lack of momentum towards something greater than themselves. Most retirees are preparing for their retirement all wrong. In fact, there have been studies that show people often spend more time planning for a vacation than they do in planning for how they'll spend their retirement years. You didn't spend the last 30, 40, 50 years of your life working diligently to save for your future to have it be mediocre at best. With average life expectancies continuing to increase, with the traditional retirement becoming less and less of a common thing, in that people are wanting to move away from one thing but towards something else, there are a lot of things to think about and consider when you're gearing up for what could be one of the most exciting times in your entire life. I'm Brittany Anderson, president and partner at Sweet Financial Partners out of Fairmont and Jackson, Minnesota. Our team of advisors, our team of professionals, they have helped thousands of people over the years to plan for their version of an ideal retirement. The problem is that many people come to us asking initially what could be construed as the wrong question. That question being, do I have enough? And it's interesting because it doesn't matter how much the person has accumulated, that same question tends to come up regardless of the savings that they've accumulated at this point in their life. So while this is definitely a valid concern that they're truly feeling, what we often share is that there's an even better question to ask yourself, and that is, what do I want to do with these precious years? That question then answers, or posing that question and finding answers to that, then answers the previous question of what you might need to create that retirement of your dreams. So before I go any further, be sure to hop on over to dreamarchitecturebook.com. You can there get a free copy of our latest book, Dream Architecture, so that you can avoid the scenario that I'm about to put in front of you in order to live a life full of possibility. So let's take, for example, this scenario. Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, Mary and Tim, they've owned their business for the last 40 years. They had a team of about 30 people, so definitely had consistent big decisions to make on the day-to-day. They recently sold their business, sold their operation, and now they are looking forward to releasing the weight of responsibility of running a successful business, of managing teams, of coordinating between the customer, between their team members, between what their big vision is. So all of that stuff is done. They've sold, and now they're looking for some downtime. They're going to actually relocate. They have relocated. They are in Southern Florida. And the first few weeks, they spend their time. They wake up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, go get a workout in, play some golf. They've been waiting to get on the golf course more. They have a leisurely late lunch. They catch up with a couple friends, enjoy a peaceful, quiet dinner together, and then they grab a book, each of them separately, books they've been putting off, maybe something in the fiction space that they just have not taken the time in their busy working years to enjoy. So this is all great, and it's so enjoyable, and it's calming, and it's peaceful. But after a few weeks, Mary starts to become restless. She's wired to get back to work after a vacation of some sorts. So that time has kind of come up. She's starting to feel that anxiety because she doesn't have that greater purpose towards dedicated work every single day. Pretty soon, Tim starts to feel the same way. Maybe it took Tim a little bit longer, but another few weeks down the road, he finds himself on edge. They're both on edge. And in turn, they start being on edge with each other, wondering how the heck they went from working and living together every single day to now being annoyed by each other's company, being frustrated. The problem is that they have no escape now. Now they can't dive into kind of their separate roles in the business. They don't have something to distract their minds or to keep them busy or give them that sense of purpose. So pretty soon they end up losing interest in their hobbies. That leisure day, all of a sudden it turns more into a stressor or even a bore because of a lack of momentum towards something greater than themselves. They look in the mirror and they find themselves to be depressed, anxious, discouraged, and just downright frustrated. The life that they thought, the life they thought would be fulfilling, it's not. It's not full, it's not captivating, it's not energizing. In fact, it's the polar opposite. Now, you might be thinking at this point, this won't happen to me. I'm gonna love every ounce of freedom. I'm retired now. I've been waiting for this my whole life. That is not gonna happen in my scenario. I've waited for these days. My question for you then, maybe you're enjoying and you're soaking up that free time. But my question for you would be, how do you know that it's not going to be you? Like for total certainty, how do you know? You might be enjoying your retirement years. Maybe you even have, 6 months, a year, a couple years under your belt, and you're feeling like you've got it figured out. The problem is that this feeling of restlessness, this loss of purpose, loss of intentional living, that can creep up on you at any time. So just because you've made it through those first few precious months, or even that year, or even year 2 or year 3, these things can start to creep up on you down the road. So the good news is that it doesn't have to be that way. With some proactive planning, you can help to avoid what are known as the retirement doldrums. You can foster a life of possibility and fulfillment that helps you to avoid that loss of purpose and that loss of intentionality that I talked about. So there are 3 simple things that you can consider when you are planning for a full retirement. Now, if I've happened to catch you before you've retired, awesome, great. We've got a little bit of time. If you're already in your retirement years, it's not too late. It's not too late to start doing this. So, this is something that's relevant to you, regardless of which stage or which side of that retirement kind of line you're on. So, the first thing, and I'm going to go through 3 key essential things you're going to want to hang through to the beginning because the third is probably the most important. Again, before we go any further, be sure to hop on over to dreamarchitecturebook.com. Grab your free copy of our latest book. The whole entire premise is helping you to build a retirement full of possibility, full of opportunity. So, tip number 1, when you're thinking about hey, I've retired. Now what am I supposed to do? How do I make this impactful? How do I make these years so powerful and so enjoyable? I've waited this long. First tip is to get crystal clear on what you're retiring to. As I mentioned earlier, the traditional retirement by sense, it's kind of gone out the window. People typically are not just planning to work, oh, I hit the age 65 and I'm done now. Now I can sail off into the sunset. I don't have to have any responsibility anymore. That's just not where the world is going. Now, with improvements in the health and longevity space and areas and opportunities for people to live not only longer lives, but higher quality lives, there's so much opportunity there. So the thing to think about is not what you're coming from. Like, what you're coming from. You're coming off of, maybe owning a business or working in a position where you've had some sort of authority or power or decision-making mechanisms. You're going away from all of that. We know that. But what we don't always know is what are you going to gravitate towards? So what we find is that, people are taking and starting brand new careers or business ventures as kind of this like secondary stage of life. So you might be retiring from one thing, but you're moving towards something else, something that'll give you that greater sense of purpose. The other thing we're often seeing is people getting involved in charitable endeavors, and not just your writing a check and donating money. That's all fine and well, but we're seeing people dive hands in, going headfirst into this, where maybe they're traveling and giving their time and their capabilities, energy, resources, all those things to things that are meaningful or causes that are meaningful to them. Maybe doing things that are philanthropic by nature that allow you to participate in your legacy right now while you're still here, willing and able to do so. So, getting crystal clear on what it is, what's that vision? If anything were possible, no limitations, what is it that you want to be doing? What are you going towards? How are you spending your time? What does that look like for you? Because sitting on the couch or even, maybe spending a little time in your garden or taking up some hobbies, that may not be enough for you. You may need something more and you may crave that down the road. You don't necessarily have to have all the answers right this minute, but getting that vision created so you can start piecing it together, that's so valuable and so important when you look at creating impactful retirement years. Point number two. Again, you're retired. Now, what are you doing? This is where you want to get in the habit of practice, practice, practice. So, what do I mean by that? Maybe you've gotten to the point where you've done this visioning work. You've gotten some clarity around how you want to spend your time, how you want to spend your energy, your attention, what's going to keep you fulfilled, and what's going to keep your brain fresh and stimulated. The problem is that you don't, or what we see happen is that people often don't practice what they think they want to do. So, for example, is that, let's just go back to the golf example. Maybe at this point in time, you spend a couple days a week on the course, you really enjoy it. You've toyed with the idea of maybe hiring a pro to give you some lessons so you can really sharpen that game. Maybe at this point, you see this vision of, gosh, if I could be on the course 5 or 6 days a week, working with a pro, nailing my game, that's really going to make me feel like I have progress I'm moving towards. And it's going to be great because it's measurable progress. I can actually see my improved stroke. I can see improvement in my game overall. So what we would recommend at that point is to go ahead and hire a pro right now. Do something right now where you're starting to step into what you see as that ideal life, because what would be terrible, what would not be fulfilling is if you got into that and you're like, okay, this whole pro thing is not as relaxing as what I thought. I actually don't enjoy it. It actually kind of stresses me out. It causes me frustration. I find myself, beating myself up over my lack of progress, and whatever the scenario is, all of a sudden, how you saw yourself spending essentially the rest of your years sharpening your golf game, spending a ton of time on the course, now you're starting to resent it. And now that's not so fun. So again, this is something that you want to start testing as soon as possible. Instead of just putting all your eggs in one basket, look at the entire vision, the entire picture of what you see to be ideal, so that you can start stepping into some of those things that you think are going to fill your time. The other thing too is we hear relocation a lot. Where we're located, we're in southern Minnesota. It gets a little bit cold around here. So, you might be looking at, like some of our clients relocating to areas in the South. So let's just take Florida, for example. So let's just say you choose a community in Florida. You've vacationed down there over the years. You seem like you really like it. It seems like a great space. It kind of has a good vibe that you're looking for. This is what we would recommend. Instead of going into it right away, because you've spent maybe a week or two there each year for the last handful of years, or maybe even longer. Maybe you spent a week or two there for the last decade. If you have not spent exponential time where you've actually been immersed in the community, where you have gotten to know some people, where you're understanding truly what the culture is, what are the people like down there? What are some of the things that are of easy access to you versus, maybe something that you have to drive towards or drive further for in order to have that fulfillment. If you're trying to spend time on the golf course, work with a pro, and the closest course is, 30, 40 minutes away, an hour away, that may be a problem. You may find that you don't like that. You don't like sitting in traffic. Even if you love the location of your home, it may not provide the amenities or the things within immediate distance that are going to leave you feeling fulfilled. So again, I use that example only to point out that you want to spend your time in the place that you think you might want to relocate to. Spend exponential time there. Rent a space for a few months. Maybe you have friends, family, relatives that you could overstay your welcome a little bit so you can really immerse yourself into the area to figure out if it's really where you want to spend the bulk of your time. So, couple examples. The biggest takeaway there is practice, practice, practice. Spend time doing, seeing, experiencing the things that you think are going to fill your time on more of a full-time basis so that you're not discouraged or let down if those prove to be things that you don't necessarily want to end up doing. So, the final thing, you're retired. Now what? What am I doing? The third tip, and this one is big, it's so important. It's to dream like you are a kid again. Stay with me here. So, somewhere along the lines as adults, we tend to lose our sense of imagination, of endless possibility. Now that you have a little breathing room, start looking at your life as if anything was possible. No limits on time, on energy, on resources. What would you do with your time? Who would you spend your time with? What would you maybe stop doing in order to start doing some of those things that appear to be really enjoyable and fulfilling to you? Stop worrying about things like, well, what will my friends or my family think if I choose to take this path? Or, can I afford it? Or what if I don't like it? Or what if it's too big of a dream? This seems ridiculous. Why am I even thinking this? Let all of those limiting beliefs go and just lean into pure possibility. Go back to the time where you were that 16-year-old kid who just got their license and you're looking out into the horizon and you're thinking about graduation and the endless possibilities that could be over that line, over that horizon, and how nothing seemed out of reach. You had big dreams and big ambitions for your future. Go back to that time in your life where you were a 5-year-old kid and you thought for sure you were going to be a superhero. You thought for sure that that was something you were going to have powers beyond what you could imagine. And you didn't have anybody telling you that wasn't possible because you're a kid and you're dreaming big and it's harmless. Go back to those times in your life and let yourself open and expand your mind, realize possibility, and lean into what the future could essentially put in front of you. That's when you really start getting creative, and that's when you really start getting out of your own way, realizing that there is so much more possibility out there than what you even imagined up until this point. You want to let yourself dream big, think big, focus on some massive impact goals that you know would leave you feeling fulfilled. You owe it to yourself to make it an impactful life, impactful retirement years. So, for more information on making your retirement years the very best yet, be sure to tune into The Biggest Opportunity in Retirement with Amber Knips.